Hi, and welcome to KOIN Conversations. My guest today is Laura Klink with the Oregon Humane Society. Laura, welcome to KOIN Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're talking about pets and the holidays. And I guess, generally speaking, the pets don't have as much enthusiasm as we do about either traveling somewhere or having guests over. So it can be kind of challenging, I guess, in so many ways, right?
Absolutely. I mean, our pets don't know that it's the holiday season. They just know that there's a lot of maybe new things, new people coming over, and things like that. So it's really important. Every pet is an individual. And so every pet's tolerance for the holidays and all the change and commotion is going to be different. So the most important thing always is to know your pet, know your pet's limitations. I mean, our pets are counting on us to make good decisions for them. So that's something I like to say all the time. So, before you get all wrapped up in the excitement of the holiday season, really think about what your pet needs to kind of stay as stress-free as possible during the holidays. The holidays are stressful for us, so you can imagine for our pets who don't really know what's going on, that it can be very stressful as well. And so it really starts with knowing your pet, knowing what that baseline is. Has your pet visited with lots of people before? Are they comfortable with new people coming to the house? One thing to keep in mind is, for a lot of people, this could be the first holiday season with a new pet. So really being extra cautious could be, best advised, especially if you don't know how your pet's going to react to all the different scenarios that can come with the holiday season.
How do you get your pet ready for people coming over? I mean, you can sit down with your kids and say, look, here's what's going to happen. Here's what I need you to do. Here's what I need you not to do. Can't really have that conversation with your pet. So, how do you get your pet ready? Let's say for the first discussion here, we're going to talk about are people coming over to your house. People maybe they don't know it's more than one or two people. How do you get them conditioned or ready for that experience?
Well, so a couple things to first start is just make sure you have some tools basically in place, because the first and foremost, you want to make sure that your pets have good identification, that their microchips are up to date. So if something happens when people are coming and going through in and out of your home, that could be a risk for a pet to get loose. And so the last thing anybody wants to have happen around the holidays is to have a loose pet that they're having to go look for. So if your pet does get loose, make sure that they have, good ID and that up-to-date microchip. A couple things to keep in mind if you are having people over to your home is consider getting a baby gate or something like that to corral your dogs or even your cats into a specific area of the house. I often like to think about like a quiet space that they can be with maybe a puzzle toy, or there's a lot of different tools. I have some here, in fact. A Kong, this is like a dog owner's best friend. So when company is coming over to put your dog in a quiet space with put some frozen peanut butter or put some peanut butter in here and freeze it, or pumpkin and freezing that is a great treat for your pet as well. So making sure that you have a plan in place. Again, it starts with knowing your dog. Like, does your dog enjoy new people coming into the house? If your dog is a little shy, or it's your first holiday season with your dog, consider putting them in a quiet space, having music on. A lot of the things that we talk about, like over 4th of July or Halloween, like and things like that. So soft music, their familiar bed, and things like that. Same goes for cats. Cats can, be pretty sensitive to change, especially, and to new people coming into the house. So making sure that they have a safe space, a smaller space where their litter box and their food and their toys are can just be, that way you can enjoy your time with your family and friends and not have to worry about your pet being stressed out. The other advantage to, maybe having your pet in a separate area of the house or in a crate, is you don't have to worry about them jumping up on the counter and grabbing that turkey leg off the counter or that food off the counter. So, there's a lot of benefits to, again, having that plan ahead of time, making sure that you've got a safe, quiet space in your home for your pet to just kind of chill out and relax while you are with your family and friends.
How do you get them essentially maybe practiced, possibly, in other words, for the idea of confinement, where if they have free reign of the home, you put them in a room and close the door. A lot of times they're not going to be too happy. In case of a dog, you might have a lot of barking that starts and goes on and on and on because they want to say, "Hey, hey, what's going on out there?" What do
No,
you
that's a
do? Do you sort of practice that ahead of time?
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't want to kind of totally change things up and do something completely new, during the holiday. So now is a great time. If you have a dog, my dog is crate trained, so he loves being in his crate. He, has a Kong or his little favorite chew toy. We also have these things called licky mats, and these things you can buy at any pet supply store. You smear some peanut butter or some food on that, and that gives them something to do while they're in that separate space. But to your point, starting ahead of time, practicing, maybe thinking about where you want that quiet space to be in your home and maybe feeding your dog or feeding your cat in that space so they start to associate it with something positive. Maybe you also like start, 20 minutes, 30 minutes that they're in that space. So they get used to being kind of in a separate quiet space, and it's not something that's completely new the first time that you have folks over and want to put them in a way. I want to talk a little bit about crate training too, because crate training is such an incredible skill for any dog to have. When I have adopted both of my dogs, who you can kind of see here, I started out with both of them crate training, feeding them in their crate, getting that crate as a positive, comforting space for them to be in. So when we travel, or when there's during the 4th of July and things like that, or when I'm not home, they're in that crate with that special little, toy, so they can stay occupied and happy. Cats, cats are a little bit different. So one of the things too, when you have a cat confined to a small space, make sure that they have kind of a nice, safe little hidey hole as well. So, chances are you have a crate that you take your cat to the vet in. Set that up too in that room, that nice quiet space, so they have a place to kind of hunker down. Maybe you've got their toys and things like that, so they can. Have some familiar things with them. But the other thing with preparation too is, think about the day that you're having folks over to your house. So with a dog, I recommend, take them, try to keep the routine as consistent as possible. Our pets thrive on routine. So as much as you can keep their routine as normal as possible, but consider taking your dog for an extra long walk. Try to get them a little bit tired. People think that cats don't like to play. This cat toy will be your best friend. 5 to 10 minutes of play with your cat can help tire them out. And start doing, I mean, I recommend that any time of year, because our, cats really just, when you just give them a toy, there's not that interaction and that bonding that happens. So this kind of little fishing toy is a great tool. So, again, think about the day, think about making sure you've got time set aside to give your pet some extra care, some extra exercise. So then when your family and friends are coming over, that they are tired, they're ready to kind of hunker down a little bit. They've got their favorite toy, their favorite treat, and they're having a happy holiday as well.
It's a concern sometimes, I guess, because sometimes things like somebody will say, well, just put the dog outside. But if the weather's not so good and the dog's not used to being outside, then it seems like that could really not be the best idea.
No, and the other consideration too is if your dog isn't used to being outside for long periods of time, there's always a chance they could get stressed out and dig under the fence and run off. And again, that's just not something that you want to be dealing with, on a holiday when you're trying to celebrate with your friends and family. So if you've got a nice, secure place inside, even a garage somewhere that is, secure for your pet. But again, start practicing, plan ahead. That's the biggest biggest thing is just plan ahead, figure out what your situation is going to be like during the holidays and start practicing now, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, start building up that time because when your friends and family are coming over, chances are you're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7 hours that they're going to be hanging out with you. So yeah, again, start planning ahead now and just start thinking about who's coming over, and are your friends and family comfortable around dogs? A lot of people are not maybe as comfortable around dogs, especially if it's a big rowdy dog. So you again want to consider your guests too, consider the stress of the dog as well.
What about traveling with pets, especially for folks that maybe are going to go on a longer drive or flying with their animal for the holidays? Are there certain things that people need to know that they absolutely should do or shouldn't do?
Well, the first and foremost, I would say that if you are planning to fly somewhere, check ahead with your airline carrier. Different airlines have different rules about animals being in cabin or in cargo. I see a lot of folks at the airport. I just kind of flew back from Atlanta a couple of days ago, and I saw a couple people with their little soft carriers and their little dogs for under the seat. But make sure you check with the airline carrier to find out what their rules are, what paperwork you're going to need. Make sure you have the right size carrier, so when you do board the airline, you're not in a situation where that carrier won't, fit under the seat. And again, like I mentioned before, get that pet used to the carrier ahead of time. So if you're flying, again, it's all about planning ahead. Make sure your pet is used to that carrier. Make sure they're comfortable riding in the car, especially if you're going on a longer plane ride. That can be pretty scary. I mean, it can be scary for people too. Flying sometimes is a little jarring. But if you're driving, some people like to travel with their cat at the holiday. If you're going to see friends and family, you may want to bring your cat. And again, that is, another thing you need to plan ahead. The place that you're going to, if you're going to a family member's home, or even if you're going to a hotel and staying at a hotel, making sure that your cat has a safe and small space. Cats, when they get freaked out, are really good at hiding in very precarious spaces, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're kind of digging around behind the dryer trying to figure out where your cat is at your family's house. So and again, if you're traveling by car, make sure that your animal is contained. Don't have your cat loose in the car. Make sure that they are in their carrier. For dogs, having them ride in a crate in the car is the safest. That may not make a lot of sense. You may not have the room for that. They make these great little seat belts for dogs, so they are secure in their seat, because you hear a lot about, like, people, if you're in a car accident or if you have to stop short or you're rear-ended, your animal can really go flying and create quite a hazard. So just make sure that your pet is secure in your car if you're traveling with them.
What about something, you talk about cats hiding. We've had experiences with that at our house with visiting visiting cats. What about putting a bell or some kind of a noise maker on the cat's collar when they're somewhere else so you can perhaps find them a little bit easier?
I mean, that's a great idea. That also comes with making sure that they have identification. If you are traveling somewhere with your cat, I would definitely recommend having a collar with that visible ID tag. And yeah, having a bell, that's a really great thought. So if you can't find them in the room and you're like, are they behind the bookshelf, and they start to move a little bit and you hear that bell, you'll know where they are. But cats, again, like, they don't love change. They really thrive on routine. So if you are thinking about traveling for the holidays with your cat, really think about whether or not you may have an alternative and that your cat may be happier at home. So it might be tempting to bring your cat along. I love my cats. I would love to travel with them all the time, but I know that would really kind of stress them out a lot. The cats are very sensitive and they don't like change.
That's very true. What about when you have overnight guests for the holidays and the pets are at your house, and people that are going to stay for a while? It's not just they're there for a few hours and leaving. how do you work that out, with the animals, especially if the animals normally have free range in the home, but maybe it's something that you don't want them, wandering into a guest room while they're still sleeping, those kinds of things. I mean, can you make the changes or, have the animal be just in one area?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's important to talk to your guest ahead of time. Like, how comfortable are they with dogs? Have they met the dog before? So, sort of when your guest is arriving, how you can set up an environment that's going to be comfortable for your guest and your dog. One thing I often, I do this with my own dogs when new people come over and they're maybe really amped up, is I'll have them on leash for a little while so they kind of stick close to me. I'll give my guests treats so they can feed my dog some treats. And so, once the novelty of that new person starts to wear off, your dog is probably a little more likely to act like themselves. But if you've got that spare bedroom and your guests are staying in that room, just encourage them to keep the door closed so the dog can't kind of, come and go. But, having friends and family staying over for a couple of days can just be a wonderful way to share your love for your animal with your friends and family, going for walks together, maybe after that big meal. It's a great excuse to get out for a walk. We got to take the dog for a walk. We just had a big meal. Let's get out with the dog. And again, this is where you have to really think about what your dog is comfortable with, or what your cat is comfortable with. Two of my cats love new people, and then two are like, bye. So, you really have to think about, like, if you have people coming to visit for a couple of days, is that going to really freak out your dog or freak out your cat? And then maybe have a plan to keep them separate even the whole time that your guests are with you. But, again, it comes down to really knowing your pet, because they can't tell us what they need. So we really have to make good decisions on their behalf.
Any tips or tricks to avoid visitors, meaning the visiting pets, from getting too stressed out and having an accident in the house? I mean, a lot of people wonder with cats if they'll spray, if they'll dig into things. Are there any kind of tips or techniques that people can do? I mean, they want to welcome in, friends, family with their pets, but maybe they don't have that experience with what to do or what not to do.
Yeah, I mean, making sure that your dog has had time to potty before the guests even arrive, take them for a nice long walk, get them tired, is
Well,
always
what
a.
about just the opposite, though? In other words, if you're a visitor coming with a pet,
Well, if you are coming to someone's house and you're bringing your pet with you, well, so then I would say, definitely make sure if you're going into someone's house, someone else's house with your pet, make sure they've gone potty before you arrive. Especially with a dog, make sure that they've gone out and gone potty. If you're traveling and you're visiting with your cat at a friend or family's home, keep that cat confined probably to a bathroom, until you know that they are comfortable with where their litter box is in that new location. Because yes, a cat peeing is not something you want to leave behind as a present during the holidays, for sure.
sure. What about mixing the home crowd and the visitors? Meaning, if you've got pets and someone is coming with pets.
That is a very good question, because that is a scenario that can go great or it can go not great. So the first thing to do is, again, have those pets met before. So that's the first thing to think about. Like, have those pets met before? Under what circumstances have those pets met before, and how have they done? So, sometimes a pet will also act different if they're coming into a different territory. So, my dogs love other dogs, but when dogs come into their house, they're a little bit more wary. So, think through, like, have our dogs met before? Have they, coexisted in each other's space okay before? If it's the first time that they're meeting, one of the best things to to do is what we call a buddy walk. So, where on neutral territory, your dogs go for a walk together and they get a chance to get to know each other. Then, when you bring them back to the house, I would say keep the visiting dog on leash, give them kind of a very slow introduction to the new space. And again, do this well before there's a lot of other guests arriving. So if you're going to visit, if you have a dog and you're going to visit friends or family and they have a dog, make sure you arrive early so you have time to kind of work through that transition to make sure it will be successful. And if you're traveling, I mean, if you have a dog and you're traveling to a friend's or family's home with a dog, bring a crate with you. That is just, as a pet owner, such an invaluable tool. So if you need to separate the dogs or if they're playing too rough, and you're just like, okay, we need a timeout. It's time to eat. And you guys are, playing like little crazy dogs, that putting them in a crate with their food or a toy, again, have all those sort of things planned out ahead of time. On our website on OregonHumane.org, we've got a lot of great ideas for we call enrichment, things to keep your dog's mind busy, and keep them occupied and happy while maybe they're in their little safe space.
You talk about keeping the pet, confined. I wonder, is that probably a good suggestion when it comes to people meal times where whether, they might have access to the table when you're not looking, or the other issue is you have people who think they're going to be a nice, kind person and slip the pet some food, even though you've asked them not to do that. Is it probably better just at mealtime to keep the pet away?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even people with great intentions, if you've got five different people feeding your pet and they don't know the other one has been feeding your pet, that could result in a lot of stomach upset and, accidents possibly later in the house. So, yes, during mealtime and even during meal prep time, I would suggest putting your dog away, confining your dog. There's a lot of different toxins that, can be very harmful for dogs. And one of the things that people don't think about a lot is onions. Onions are very toxic to dogs. And I don't know about you, but when I've been in the kitchen chopping onions and, my eyes are watering, some of those onions can fall on the floor really easily.
For
And
sure.
especially for a little dog, that can be very toxic. But other things like chocolate, poinsettias, and mistletoe, those are even toxic. Not that you're eating those during dinner, but those are things to kind of keep in mind too, as other toxics that are in the home. But chocolate, grapes, raisins. There's a lot of resources online to know which foods are toxic for your pets. But really, definitely during meal prep and meal time, keep those pets out of the kitchen. That's where a baby gate or an X pen that you can kind of corner off the kitchen can be really valuable.
Yeah, and it's hard for people because, you get these little paws on your lap in the middle of dinner and that little face. I mean, it's kind of hard to resist. So,
Dogs know how to work it for sure. But one thing you can do too, if your guests are, it's just they're coming from such a sweet place, right? They want to treat your dog to something special. Do still get your dog something special. We partner with this wonderful local businesses called Bring Treats for Dogs, and Kristen makes these little cupcakes and cookies that all have dog safe ingredients. So if you're going to visit someone who has a dog in their home, maybe you bring that, and that's the little special treat for your dog, for the dog during meal time. So if you provide your guests with something appropriate to feed your dog during mealtime or after mealtime, all the better, because then you're keeping their diet as consistent as possible with foods that will generally agree with a pet stomach, a dog stomach.
I like that idea. You could be, bringing some hostess gifts for the dog or cat that's there that are approved, I guess, by your host.
Yeah, and I think that during the holidays too, we're always struggling with I was invited to this person's house for the holidays. What do I bring? What do I bring? If they have a pet in the home, I would definitely encourage you bring an item for the pet. Sometimes we all have enough stuff, bring something for the pet. People love to spoil their pets, and if you bring a nice little treat for them, that's a really lovely gesture.
Laura Klink from the Oregon Humane Society. Thanks for joining us here in KOIN Conversations. This has been wonderful for any time when anybody's traveling, whether it's the holidays or even another time of what to do. Great advice, great ideas. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care.
Thanks.